Several system windows began to float around Langay. His attention was fixed on them and his mind was filled with confusion and surprise, realizing that Lan had sent another video. Lunong's eyes were filled with surprise. He asked Langay to open the video. With a serene gaze, Langay decided to comply and began to bring his finger closer to the system window. He opened the video, which contained the recording of the fight between Lu Shang and Officer Lan. Langay's eyes were filled with fear. His jaw dropped in shock, realizing that it was a video of the combat between Lan and Lu Shang. Lunong's attention was fixed on the system window. He placed his hands on the table and stood up. His jaw dropped in surprise. He could not believe that this had happened. He was so in shock that he sat down in his chair to try to understand what was happening. His eyes began to shine with rage. He put his hand on top of his head and could not help but clench his teeth tightly. After going over the matter several times, he finally understood it. Lu Shang was not from the law enforcement department of the Yamu zone. With a gaze full of fear, he began to sweat, even starting to suspect that he was not someone from the stellar universe. Langay began to read the files that Lan had sent. His eyes widened with surprise and curiosity when he realized there was still one last file left to read. Lunong interlaced his hands, began to gaze toward the ground and despite being furious, remained calm and asked Langay to open the file. Langay began to observe him in silence, not knowing what to do. With his face full of sweat, Lunong began to raise his head and his eyes widened with confidence. He was already getting an idea of what the last file might contain. Langay opened the file and Lu Shang's personal information appeared. The file indicated that he was 21 years old and had a power level of 9. His identity was that of a level 1 native from Resource Planet A28462 in the White Mist Star region, currently being a level 3 citizen in the Yamu region. Observations confirmed that his combat power was comparable to that of a level 11 warrior, and that he possessed an extremely strong supernatural life constitution. The level of this constitution was unknown, but it was estimated to be above the Yari range, and his potential level was classified as SSS. Lunong's body began to tremble and his eyes filled with despair. Realizing that Lu Shang was a native of the Blue Planet, Langay began to read carefully and could not help but panic. He could not believe that Lu Shang was a level 9 warrior, with combat power comparable to a level 11, a native from a level 1 resource planet, with an estimated supernatural life constitution above stellar and SSS potential. It seemed incredible to him that all these words could be combined in this way. With a furious expression, Lunong slammed the table hard, knowing that Langay was an idiot. He was sure they had given him some credit and, because of this, he hadn't carefully reviewed all this information. Langay's eyes widened with nervousness and he couldn't help but panic. Lunong's eyes began to shine with fury. He revealed that the reason why Lan had refused to hand over the documents and had taken the 2 agents from his area under the pretext of recording statements was to buy time. The objective was to take back to the Yamu region this native prodigy named Lu Shang before they discovered him. Langay began imagining Lan smiling with an evil gaze. Langay's face filled with sweat and his jaw dropped in shock. He didn't know what to do now. The system window revealed that Lu Shang was a native of the level 1 resource planet A28462 from the White Mist Star region, and currently, a level 3 citizen of the Yamu region. Lunong clenched his teeth, began to read carefully, and couldn't help but feel somewhat surprised to notice that Lu Shang was from their territory. While his eyes were shining with rage, he grabbed the glass of water and threw it at Langay's face. The glass of water hit poor Langay on the head, making him fall to his knees on the ground. With a gaze full of regret, he began to cry and admitted that he had made a mistake. With a furious expression, Lunong began to stare at him intently. He knew that Lu Shang was a level 9 super genius who could face someone of level 11, comparable to the elite of the stellar treasures, a rough gem that only appeared every hundreds of thousands of years. Lunong clenched his teeth and his eyes widened with rage. He couldn't believe that Lan had taken Lu Shang from them. He had brushed past their White Mist Star region and, without them realizing it, had become someone from the Yamu region right before their very eyes. Langay knelt before him, hit his head against the ground and asked for forgiveness. He raised his head and now had blood on his forehead, with an expression full of regret, and asked Lunong to give him another chance. Lunong sat in his seat, turned his back, closed his eyes and mentioned that it was already too late. He told Officer Langay that he no longer considered him suitable for this position and that he should go take a good rest for a while. Langay began to observe Lunong in silence with a surprised gaze and sank into his thoughts. With a gaze full of sadness, he began to gaze at the ground, not knowing what to do now. At the same time, it was daytime and somewhere in the Yamu Star region there was a luxury hotel. Lu Sheng, who was standing in front of the hotel, began to observe the landscape with a curious gaze. Lan, who was standing behind, extended his hand and with a kind smile suggested that he stay in this place to rest for a few days for now. While his eyes were shining with confidence, with a smile he mentioned that Lu Sheng was very lucky, since the Yamu region was recruiting new celestial rank apprentices. He assured him that, when the time came, he himself would take him to evaluate his potential, the level of his supernatural life constitution. Lu Sheng turned around and his eyes began to shine with joy, and a smile appeared on his face upon noticing that Lan was in a good mood. With a forced smile, Lan began to touch his cheek and admitted that some good things had happened to him. In addition, he informed him that the reward for eliminating the band of star pirates would be delivered soon, assuring him that his share would not disappoint. He turned his back on Lu Sheng, began waving goodbye and asked him to go rest first, assuring him that he would come looking for him when the time came. Lu Sheng said goodbye to him and thanked him. Lu Sheng began walking toward the hotel door. Langay's eyes started to shine with malice and a smile appeared on his face. He still had some plans in mind. Lan's eyes widened with excitement and he couldn't help but smile. But just then, his watch started to beep. His attention fixed on it and his mind filled with curiosity. He activated the watch and the hologram of someone sitting on a throne appeared. Lan's eyes filled with seriousness upon realizing that it was the Lord Executor. With a smile, she mentioned that Lan had done very well this time. She was very satisfied, and asked him to go to the office in a moment. The hologram disappeared. Lan closed his eyes and nodded with a smile. With a joyful expression, he began to jump for joy, and couldn't help but whistle, knowing that today was a great day. Lu Sheng entered the hotel and began to walk through the hall, which was full of beings from all over the universe. Among them there were skeletons and animals. While our boy was lost in his thoughts, someone caught his attention and informed him that his room was ready. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng came out of his trance and his eyes filled with surprise and curiosity. It was a woman with a tail and dog ears, while her eyes were shining with joy. With a smile, she extended her hand and asked Lu Sheng to follow her. The woman had a very sensual body and a pretty tail. Lu Sheng's attention focused on the tail and his eyes filled with surprise and he couldn't help but blush. She turned her back on our boy and started walking toward his room. Lu Sheng began to lose control as he wanted to touch her tail. He had no resistance to furry things. Noticing this, her eyes widened in confusion. With a smile, she turned around and with a loving gaze mentioned that their hotel also offered special services. Lu Sheng began to observe her in silence. He put his hand under his chin and, with a curious look, began to ponder, then mentioned that, actually, he did have a need. Upon hearing this, the woman began to wag her tail from side to side. She approached our boy, started looking into his eyes and with a smile asked what kind of need Lu Sheng had. Lu Sheng watched her and couldn't help but feel somewhat confused. He closed his eyes, placed his hands on her shoulders, and moved her aside, explaining that he wanted to withdraw some cash. Black coin energy blocks. The woman couldn't help but feel somewhat embarrassed and asked how many black coin energy blocks Lu Sheng wanted to withdraw. Our boy put his hand under his chin and with a serene gaze began to think. He decided to first withdraw about 5 million black coin energy blocks. He had 10 million in the account, so he considered that taking out half for training was perfect. While the woman's eyes were shining with love, she started touching her hair and asked our boy if he needed anything else. Lu Sheng entered his room, closed the door and said that he didn't want anything else. Seeing this, the woman was left stunned, knowing that Lu Sheng was a strange man. Our boy entered his room and began to observe the place carefully, realizing that its layout was not bad at all. He put his hands into his pants pockets and started to take something out. Lu Sheng took out 3 identity cards and with a calm look, noticed that they contained no information. He wondered if, once people died, their money could no longer be withdrawn, which seemed like a complete scam to him. Then he took out the storage ring and began to examine it closely with a curious look, knowing that inside there was only a bunch of trash and that it would be best to sell everything in order to exchange it for things he really needed, such as a spaceship and an advanced combat suit. His eyes began to shine with joy and a smile spread across his face. There was no time to lose. He decided he would go out that very night for a walk to investigate the prices of this place, amused by the possibility of turning out to be a hidden rich man of the universe. Thanks for watching Vivify Recaps. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and drop your next recap request in the comments. See you in the next one.